Welcome back to the deep dive. We're here to unpack the stories, the documents, and give you the crucial insights. Today, we're doing something quite significant, actually. We're diving into a formal resolution. It's from the Azerbaijani People's Parliament, the APP, and it was adopted just recently, September 13th, 2025. And this isn't, just a news report. It's a parliamentary declaration. It lays out some really striking concerns and demands about the Heydar Aliyev Foundation, the HAF, in Azerbaijan. So our mission today is simple. Unpack this document. We need to understand the core allegations against the HAF and explore the specific actions the parliament is calling for. It's quite direct stuff.
It really is. And for anyone interested in, how governance actually works or doesn't work, this document is fascinating. It brings up these fundamental questions about independence, about money, transparency, accountability, things that are critical for any society to function properly. We're looking at how an organization presented one way is perceived very differently by this parliamentary body. It's about power, really.
Okay, let's unpack this then. With that context set, what's the headline finding, the main conclusion the APP reaches about the HAF?
Well, they don't really hold back. The central finding, it's pretty blunt. They state that despite being set up as an NGO, a non-governmental organization, the parliament asserts, and this is their term, that the HAF is actually a corruption hub.
Wow, corruption hub. That's strong language from a parliament.
It is. And they go on to claim it's completely controlled by the ruling families, the Aliyevs and Pashayevs. Essentially, they argue it's been turned into a political tool for the regime.
So not independent at all, according to this resolution.
Not in the slightest. Based on the APP's claims, it kind of challenges what we even mean by NGO in some contexts. This idea of state capture of civil society.
Right.
It's a known tactic. You create these bodies that look independent.
But they're actually consolidating power.
Precisely. It helps manage perception, both at home and, importantly, abroad.
Okay, so if it's seen as an arm of the state, what does that mean for people, for ordinary citizens?
Well, it fundamentally erodes trust, doesn't it? You expect an NGO maybe to advocate for you to be independent. If that's gone, or perceived to be gone, it really stifles genuine civil society. People might feel there's nowhere independent to turn.
Makes sense. Now, the resolution seems to spend a lot of time on the finances, money. And this, I think, is where things get particularly detailed. What are the core financial concerns?
The absolute core is transparency, or rather, the complete lack of it. According to the APP resolution, there is just no public information. None. On where HAF gets its money, its income, how it spends it, zero public data.
And that lack of transparency, the APP links that directly to potential corruption.
Explicitly, they argue it creates, quote, fertile ground for corruption. And, globally, we know this, right? Financial opacity is almost always a massive red flag. It makes tracking funds, preventing misuse, incredibly difficult.
So officially, the books are closed. But the resolution also talks about public perception of the funding, and the allegations there are, well, they're pretty stark.
Yeah, they are. While the official sources are hidden, the APP says the public widely believes the funds come from illicit sources. They actually list specific things. Alleged bribes, compulsory deductions from state employees' salaries.
Forced deductions.
That's the allegation. Also, mandatory transfers demanded from businessmen and even bribes paid for getting promotions in government jobs.
Wow. So systemic extraction is the picture they're painting.
Exactly. And the resolution connects this directly to financial crime risks. It says this situation strengthens the possibility of money laundering and legitimizing illegal financial flows. So we're not just talking about bad bookkeeping. We're talking potential systemic illicit finance channeled through the foundation.
And it's not just where the money comes from, right?
Yeah.
It's also how it's allegedly spent. The resolution talks about misappropriation of public wealth for image building. What kind of projects are we talking about?
Yeah, the APP focuses on HAF's international activities. Things like funding restorations of museums or churches abroad, sponsoring big international cultural events, that kind of thing. High-profile stuff.
Okay. And the argument is?
The argument from the APP is that these projects mainly serve to boost President Aliyev's image internationally, that they're about legitimizing the regime on the world stage rather than tackling Azerbaijan's own socioeconomic issues. They even mention billions of public funds allegedly being spent this way.
Billions. So it raises that fundamental question, whose priorities are being served?
Precisely. The resolution sets up this stark contrast. Glamorous international projects versus, presumably, unmet domestic needs. It's a direct challenge to how national resources, potentially public money, are being allocated.
Okay, moving beyond the purely financial, the parliament also talks about wider impacts, how these alleged operations affect governance itself.
Right. The claim is that HAF's opaque finances don't just enable corruption, they actively deepen it, and that this negatively influences decisions across the board, political, social, economic, within the state administration. It's presented as a systemic problem, a ripple effect corrupting the whole system.
And there's another really jarring claim about charitable projects being sort of co-opted.
Yes, that's a striking one. The APP alleges that social facilities, think schools, clinics, even mosques that are built with private money, are then forcibly registered under the Heydar Aliyev Foundation's name.
Forcibly. How would that work?
The resolution claims this is a method used to then illegally siphon funds from the state budget. So a private charity builds something, HAF allegedly takes the credit, and then uses that as a basis to draw public money. It's quite a scheme, if true.
And the impact of that, if you're a businessman wanting to genuinely donate.
The APP argues it has a chilling effect. Why would you fund a project if you think it's just going to be essentially hijacked and used to potentially siphon state funds? It discourages real philanthropy and creates a coercive environment instead. It undermines genuine charitable intent.
The resolution goes further, linking HAF's activities to human rights issues as well.
It does. It asserts HAF's work reinforces authoritarianism and, directly or indirectly, supports human rights violations. It's described almost as a driver, pushing state officials into corruption.
How so? What's the mechanism they describe?
They paint this really vivid and frankly disturbing picture. State officials are allegedly pressured to collect informal money, off-the-books money, for HAF projects.
Okay.
And this pressure, this involvement in illicit collection, supposedly makes these officials feel untouchable, above the law, leading to, and these are the APP's words, robber-like and bandit-like behavior towards ordinary citizens. Rights violations become routine.
That's a truly devastating picture of how corruption can cascade down.
It really is. A complete breakdown of the rule of law, triggered, allegedly, by the demands of this foundation.
And then there's the elephant in the room, the conflict of interest, the first vice president also heading the HAF.
Yes, the resolution is very explicit about this. What's interesting is they list the specific risks they see stemming directly from this dual role.
What kind of risks?
Well, first, an increased risk of state resources being diverted for personal or political gain. Obvious, perhaps, but they spell it out. Higher chances of corruption, bribery, lack of transparency, all exacerbated by this setup. They argue it cements HAF's role as a political tool, not an NGO, and makes state employees dependent. Plus, it ensures international projects serve government PR and leads to HAF's work being seen both inside and outside of Azerbaijan as propaganda, not charity.
So the APP's bottom line on this conflict of interest
Is that it's fundamentally wrong, legally and ethically, that it directly fosters corruption and poses a threat to Azerbaijan's national interests and even statehood itself.
Okay, so we've heard the diagnosis, a pretty damning one. What's the prescription? The resolution moves into demands, right? For change, for accountability, directed both internally and externally. Let's start with the demands on the Azerbaijani government itself.
Right. Internally, the demands are sweeping. First off, full public disclosure. All HAF financial reports, sources, income, spending made public.
Transparency, basically.
Exactly. Then remove the leadership from ruling family control. Bring in independent public bodies, civil society. They also demand independent international audits of all HAF projects with the results published.
International audits, that's significant.
Very. And they want HAF repurposed. Stop using it as a propaganda tool. Focus only on genuine needs: education, healthcare, social protection, human rights. And finally, stop that alleged practice of registering private projects under HAF's name. Stop the siphoning of budget funds and prosecute those responsible.
That's a huge internal reform agenda, but they don't stop there. They look outward, too, to the international community.
Yes, because HAF operates internationally, they argue the international community has a role. They call on international bodies, European states, the EU Parliament, the UN, OSCE, to make transparency, accountability, and human rights key conditions for any cooperation with HAF. Don't just engage, basically, set conditions. Precisely. And they get specific. They appeal to UN bodies dealing with the UN Convention Against Corruption, which, importantly, Azerbaijan signed up to back in 2004. They're saying, hold them to their commitments.
And they mentioned the Council of Europe, too.
Yes, they asked GRECO, the Council of Europe's anti-corruption group, to specifically investigate HAF.
Yeah.
Again, Azerbaijan joined the relevant Council of Europe Anti-Corruption Convention in 2004. So they're pointing to existing frameworks and asking for scrutiny within those frameworks. A Greco investigation would be a big deal.
So, connecting the dots here, these aren't just suggestions. They're grounding their demands in international law that Azerbaijan is already part of.
Absolutely. It's an attempt to leverage those international commitments, to say these aren't just internal issues. They have international legal and ethical weight.
And then the ultimate demand from the APP, the final conclusion.
Given everything else they've laid out, the opacity, the alleged corruption, the conflict of interest, they call for the complete cessation and closure of the Heydar Aliyev Foundation. Full stop.
Just shut it down.
That's the final demand. And they end with a call for solidarity from Azerbaijanis and for the international community to keep watch, demand transparency, and act against corruption.
So let's recap this deep dive. We've examined a resolution from the Azerbaijani People's Parliament, making incredibly serious allegations against the Heydar Aliyev Foundation. Widespread corruption, zero financial transparency, a major conflict of interest. Essentially painting it not as an NGO, but as a tool of the ruling regime.
Yeah, and it really shows how an official body, a parliament, can voice these deep concerns about accountability, especially when an organization that looks like a charity on the surface is accused of serving very different interests, political, personal power. It highlights that constant tension, doesn't it, between public good and private or state power. The allegations here are systematic, touching everything from funding to human rights.
Indeed. And it leaves us, and you, with a final thought to chew on. When international bodies are presented with such detailed allegations of corruption and rights issues linked to an organization operating globally, often under the banner of charity, what is their responsibility? And maybe more broadly, how do we ensure that genuine charitable work isn't conflated with or tainted by operations alleged to be primarily about political power and propaganda? Something to think about. That's it for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.